Hey everyone, welcome. I'm going to talk about Windows SCCM observability today. Actually, I'm not, because I brought a guest along with me. Johan, do you want to introduce yourself?
Johan Swanepoel. I'm one of our principal solutions engineers at Dynatrace, mainly focused on public sector. And we'll be talking about SCCM. Now, my background, and I think this is relevant to the conversation, is I'm more of a Linux person. I've been using Linux for 25 years and generally don't do too much on Windows infrastructure. And so when we had to help a customer look at their SCCM infrastructure, it was kind of interesting trying to understand what is good for them to look at, what makes sense, how we can really help. And that's the conversation today. And to do this, obviously, was a fair amount of AI involved in investigations and understanding what is happening. So what we'll talk about really is I'll show you a few dashboards, show you how we built an extension. But first, what was the environment? What did that look like? So pretty small environment that we did the proof of value on. We looked at 3 hosts, 2 SCCM hosts, and 1 database host. And the understanding, or at least my understanding of SCCM, there is the things that that you want to look at for the health is information out of IIS. If that component works well, it's good. The database, how healthy is the database? Looking for database locks and all those kind of things. But how do we get that information? In this case, we installed one agent to get the logs and the event logs out of Windows. Logging for SCCM in particular in this environment was turned down because it's too verbose. And so we had to assemble this kind of picture to understand what is happening in the environment. And so a lot of this information is going through the logs, trying to understand what's going on until we started looking at using AI to help with that conversation, because the SCCM administrators had a view of what they normally look at, but didn't understand all the things that we could get in this environment to understand what that is and what that means. So there's a few things in here. Host health, that's kind of obvious. Are these hosts healthy? Are they running out of memory, or are they running out of disk space? Or what's the network transfer looking at like between these things? We've got the dashboard up now. But that's one of the things that the first and obvious thing that we wanted to look at in this environment. Then it came down to saying, and pretty much the query that I used to build out this view, it was saying, well, if I have access to the IIS logs and the Windows event logs, we also installed the Dynatrace extension for SQL Server on the environment, so we get the SQL Server metrics from that. I then said, what would be interesting to understand? What would help me know if the environment's healthy or if things are going downhill in that environment? And so things like understanding the version of the clients connecting in or that they're using in that environment. So if that's all good, in this case, upgrades are really good. It's all where they need to be. Understanding or assembling information on hosts that have checked in, but that have not been checking in continuously. So getting that view of the world. Now, as an example, we've masked out all the host IPs for these and sort of grouped them into buckets. But if you look at these, this query here and this DQL is not a query that I wrote. That is a query that going through that process and saying, hey, help me plug the gaps in my SCCM skills. What would be interesting? Or seeing this information, how would you query that? And it did everything from parsing the unstructured logs or events that we got from those Windows hosts all the way down to helping create these buckets. And then there's obviously a bit of back and forth and saying, well, adjust this or adjust that in that sense and in that environment.
So did you
Yeah.
did you provide a sample log and said this is the log that I want you to parse, or did Claude or the AI know this? I just know what this log looks like anyway from the training data, and then it knows how to parse it. I mean, either way, it's impressive that it's come out with this, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, good. It would be nice if I could point it at the data. And this environment is one where I couldn't just point it at the data and say, hey, here's the data that I've got. Go and build this thing for me. In this case, it used the training data that it had to build out that query and that information. And there was not a lot of back and forth to get it right. It generally just worked. It was more setting up the buckets. Yeah, that would have been nice. Other stuff that was kind of interesting getting out when we started showing this to the SCCM administrators are things like this. So this is a small environment, but what it's showing us is just this average sync time of files between the servers. Now this, again, we pulled through the IIS information, and I can get from those sort of logs, again, because we installed the IIS extension on one agent with those hosts, which is a really simple exercise to do as well. But pulling this back in a bigger environment, if you can imagine a massively distributed environment where these hosts are running geographically dispersed, this information very quickly will start telling us if there's an issue in a geography or if there's network problems in a specific area. Am I able to sync files? How long does it take to sort of send those things across and those files across? But the team looked at this, the SCM admins, and went, yep, this is great, but we want more. Like there's things that we can see that they normally look at in terms of Windows performance counters. And so it's like, can you get some of these things? So things like inbox and outbox. And so the world that I come from, in app dev, oftentimes components communicate via queues. In your SCCM world, I think the concept's pretty similar. It's sort of files used to sync things, and you've got like an inbox and an outbox. And so if these things start filling up, then there's a problem in the infrastructure. It's sort of or the health of specific components that these processes, these files. And so getting this information, this is not something that was in the logs. It's information that we needed to pull using Windows performance counters. And again, the process there to get this information was then to build a custom extension. And now that's not as difficult as it sounds. It's not a lot of development to get this information out. What's in the platform now is there's an extensions creator view where if you're pulling in WMI-based information, you can do that by a config and YAML. But now if you look at this YAML file, you wouldn't want to craft this by hand. Right? So there's a lot of stuff there. You've defined, generally the structure is I define the metrics or the keys that I need, and then the WMI queries that I need to get that information out. But to do that, you need to know these WMI queries really well, historically. Again, this is where I used AI to help craft these queries. So we got a sense of, if I just walk through the process, we pulled up all the counters that were available on those hosts, which was a big list, and then went with the things that are available, what would make sense to query for someone that is looking at SCCM infrastructure and that is supporting that infrastructure. And so the agent made a really good assessment of, you want to look at inbox count, outbox file count, your data inventory loader, and these kind of things. And so that's how we cut that extension and then asked it to go and create that file for us, this extension file for us. And because it understood Dynatrace, it was able to do that for us. And so what you see here is a query that says, hey, with the current extension file that we have, am I covering everything that I need to cover to do that? That's what I've asked it to do there. And it's gone through that and said, hey, yep, you're covering these ones that are really good. You may be missing a few that would be interesting. And then there's some of the database stuff that would be useful too. Now, in this case, what the AI doesn't know is we're getting all these database metrics already through the out-of-the-box database extension that we do have. But what that's done for us is it's given us the information that we need then to go and build this dashboard that gives us a very quick overview of the health of the infrastructure and the environment, and give the team a sense of how they can further extend that if they need to extend that environment as well. Yeah, that's basically.
It's probably worth saying. I know in the sort of pre-show, the AI isn't connected to this Dynatrace environment because it's a customer environment. So, and what I've noticed is when I ask, Claude, it will reach, especially if you've got the DTCTL, CLI, and the skills, it'll notice that, oh, these will be good metrics to have on a dashboard. You don't have them. And then it'll reach into Dynatrace and notice that you actually do have them. And it'll put them on the dashboard. So it's clever enough to realize that there's a gap, and then it reaches into Dynatrace to go, oh, we've already got them. Let me just enrich the dashboard. So that's why, there's a gap there where it's thinking you don't have them, but you really do.
Yes. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And there was a few times in this process where I wished I could connect DTCTL into the environment and go, hey, here's the information available to you. What can you show me that's interesting? Which is a pretty broad question, but you get some good outcomes with it from time to time. But 100% correct. Yeah.
Really good. Really good stuff.
Thank you.
I've actually got no questions whatsoever. I think this is really good stuff. So if this has looked interesting, all of this, I think I'm right, Johan, all of this is able to be anonymized and shared on GitHub. So we'll have links to what we can share in the description with all the readmes and all the docs on how you can recreate all of this yourself.
Yes. Yeah, no, there's nothing in the dashboards or the extensions that's specific to any one customer. So we can share all of that. Okay.
Awesome. I guess that's it then. We'll put all of everything we can on GitHub, and check out the links in the description below if you want to recreate this. And again, thanks, Johan, for the time. It's a brave new world we're in, but I think if you'd said we could have done this a year ago, I wouldn't have believed you. And now it's just kind of becoming normal. It's fun. Any final thoughts?
No, yeah, I think just the good thing is what it's done for me is it's made it possible for me to take experience and knowledge from adjacent areas and adjacent spaces and help fill that deep SME gap in a specific problem domain. Because the problems are all transferable. It's the specifics about how you query a thing or how you build a thing that's kind of missing in some of these environments, which has been awesome.
And it's educating as well, right?
Yep.
Because you're not only educating ourselves on, well, what should I be looking at, but also, a lot of the times customers say, well, I don't really know what is high priority. What should I be monitoring? What should I be looking at? How should I be observing this? How, all these kinds of questions. So I think you've hit on something good there, which I've noticed as well. If you can ask the AI an open-ended question like, what should I be looking at? Even if just sort of pretend you don't, and inspire you a lot of the time, and if you know, you can obviously drill down. But no, really good stuff. I'm gonna leave it there. Thank you so much for your time, and I'm sure we'll have you back on pretty soon for another dashboard with some more technology.
Awesome. Anytime. Thank you.